Hey guys, it's Skiff. Today I want to talk about some things that have to do with casting, things I think that aren't really addressed often, if at all, honestly. But I do want to preface that most of this comes from my experiences within the Smash community. They can be applied to other games, but I feel like, just for pretense's sake and for everyone not to kind of be like, well, that doesn't happen over here. This is mostly about my time in Smash Bros. And casting there. But I do want to also say that this is not about how to get into casting or how to do better, performance-wise. I mean, I may touch on those things briefly, but that's not what this video is about. But either way, let's go ahead and get into it. So the main three topics I want to cover today are how casters are chosen for gigs, interactions and public perception, and then what expectations to have when trying to get into casting. Now, again, this is all from my perception and how I see things. It's not exactly law. It's not how everybody's going to see things the same way, but it's just kind of like my general thoughts and what I feel like I've experienced. But let's get into this first one here, how casters are chosen for gigs. Every once in a while I see this conversation come up. It's about hard work versus who you know. Some people think that you just have to keep grinding, and then other people claim that it does not, none of that matters at all. It doesn't matter how many locals you've done, how many regionals you've done. It's just about who you know. But the absolute truth of that is it's kind of both, right? Now, you do have to put in work, right? And knowing who hires you, is a good advantage. But if you're not doing your locals or your regionals to kind of show those guys, hey, I know what I'm doing here, why would they hire you? That just doesn't make sense. So you kind of have to do both, right? See, me personally, during the Wi-Fi era, I grinded commentary harder than anybody else. Maybe that can be debated, but I'm pretty sure I was the guy. I was on gigs almost every day. I think the most I had was 9 gigs in a week. Right, I was just trying to do as much as I could, and I just kind of went crazy with it. I was working for free. There were paid gigs, right? They started popping up more when people started seeing, I was good at what I was doing, and I was motivated. I really wanted to be there. So yeah, eventually I would start getting more paid gigs, and I'd meet the right people, which would get me more gigs, more paid gigs too. But eventually, also, people would start reaching out to me, which is a good feeling, right? But that's because I was working so hard that people know about me. My name started spreading around more because of that. And it just ended up building up to this kind of crescendo where eventually I've done a couple top 8s at majors. It's about hard work, but it's also who you know. They kind of go hand in hand, or at least who knows you. But I mean, you got to remember that TOs are people. They're not an obstacle between you and working gigs at majors. There's someone you work with. Even if the relationship between you two is entirely professional, if you treat them anything less than what they should be treated, you're not going to get hired. These are people. I mean, they can tell who's fake and who's full of it, so you just got to be a decent person. It's really that easy. But when it comes down to the hiring process, every TO is different. Some like to hire more local talent. Some like to hire the more trustworthy, brand names, I guess you could call them. Some like to hire their friends, friends that they like working with. Some will take risks, right? But every single one of those options is okay because it's their event. And I feel like every event kind of hires a friend or someone who's connected to the organization at some point. And that's not a bad thing. However, the only way you get to skip the line is by being a top player who talks pretty well, or you're a content creator. And I gotta say to all the other casters, if this is something that bothers you, you gotta swallow that pride real quick, because that's gonna catch up to you at some point. Because, me, and I'm sure some other casters, I remember seeing HBox getting these big blocks and being a little pressed about it, right? And, I've put in a lot of work casting. He's been running events and is a good player, but I've put in the work casting. But eventually I got over that, right? Because it's kind of the nature of the beast, and it's a smart business decision. Thousands of people tune in to watch this guy every day, right? Thousands of people don't tune in to watch me. They're already watching Smash Bros. But thousands of people tune in to watch HBox every day and other content creators. So when they get those blocks, I can't blame them. I can't blame the orgs. I can't blame HBox for taking it. So, I mean, he still put in hard work, but in a different way. And so I honestly support him for just taking those. I mean, he's not even a bad caster. He's pretty good. But moving on, I want to talk about public perception and interactions, right? This is something I think a lot of people could get better at. And there's very few people who I think are very, very good, right? They're nearly perfect. They have a persona or whatever, and they don't really let their feelings get a hold of them too much. I could definitely use some work. Believe me, I'm no angel on Twitter myself, but again, it's something we can all do a little bit better at. Now, like I kind of mentioned before, we all know the wonderful family-friendly world of social media, Twitter, YouTube, etc. It's a cesspool half the time. I don't gotta harp on that too much. We all know. But I keep telling people that a majority of Smash Twitter does not exist at IRL tournaments. They're not real, right? Half of them can't even go because either they're a child or they just don't have the money, right? They're just there on Twitter because they get to be angry at something and have an anime profile picture covering up their face. It's just what it is. So I bring that up because a lot of people are going to say some terrible things about your commentary. You know, in Twitch chat, on Twitter, YouTube VODs. God forbid you go look at 4chan. But that's just kind of what it is. It's people who are hiding behind a screen and they get to say whatever they want with no real consequences. So it's one of those things where you either have to learn that people just suck. You just got to accept that. People are terrible. People like to say rude things. Or you just don't read the comments, which is probably the better option for a lot of people, to be real. I personally take a stroll through some of these options because they genuinely make me laugh when they say something about me. Because half the time, one person will be angry about one thing, and then another person will be angry about the exact opposite thing. So it's just people with different views. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, they're people. Next, I want to talk about interactions with your fellow casters because, surprise, surprise, you're going to be talking to other casters a lot. And when you go to work, you see your coworkers, you're going to talk to your coworkers a lot. It may not be about things that you necessarily enjoy, but that's just how this works. But something to kind of keep in mind is a lot of casters are friends. We talk to each other, we hang out with each other a lot. We go out to dinner after gigs and stuff like that. That's just what we do. Some of my closest friends are other casters. You know, we've established a great friendship. That allows us to flow a lot better when we're on the mic. So, I mean, how other casters perceive you, it's important, right? If I'm sitting down to someone I really do not like, I'm probably not going to work with them too well. I mean, I'll work with them pretty okay. I feel like I'm good enough to do that, but I'm not feeling like I'm going to put in my 100%. And that's just how it is. Doesn't matter what job it is. But then, you know, there's a difference between me not liking someone that I'm working with and then me working with someone who I perceive as an actual problem. Like, you are obviously creating a distraction. You are just not a good person. Like, these things happen. But, like, when you end up being that type of person, casters talk. Like, we talk to each other like, hey, I kind of had this really weird interaction with this other person. Like, I don't really ever want to work with them. Like, it was just strange. I've told TOs before, hey, I noticed you have me and this other person hired. I'm not trying to eliminate any blocks from them. I just prefer not to work with them, if that's possible. If it's not possible, I'll deal with it, but hopefully you kind of take this into consideration. But like I was saying, if you end up being a problem person, like, it's going to be harder to get you gigs because casters will talk to TOs, and TOs will find out anyway. That's just, they run the event. Like, people are going to talk to them. But, like, I don't know, this is how it works. But I'm not saying you have to suck up to people. Like, that's definitely not it. You just got to be cordial, right? Just be decent people. And you're going to hear that a lot. Be a decent person. And the whole being decent thing, that kind of also ties into Twitter, right? Like, if you think your circle tweets aren't being seen by your fellow casters or TOs, you're in for a rude awakening. But yeah, complaining on Twitter just doesn't do you any good. Complaining is bad. Being disappointed, that's completely fine. You can always express your disappointment. Oh man, I was really looking forward to this one. You know, it's just, I kind of feel bad, blah, blah, blah. But like, don't tear down the event. That's like a potential career killer. It doesn't look good on you. And if other people see it, like your co-casters might be like, all right, a little bit weird. Could at least be happy for me, that type of stuff. But I do actually kind of want to touch on a tweet that Wisely, this tweet here, you can follow Wisely here. He kind of touched on this topic a little bit recently. In this tweet, he briefly touches on the fact that sometimes we find out about casters because they're complaining on Twitter. And that's just not a good first impression. And these complaints don't just come from the casters, they also come from the casters' like friends and supporters. And I love a good support system, right? But you kind of have to find a way to control that burn. Like, you can't control what other people say. I completely get that, right? But you can take steps to, make it not about you. Like, for instance, there's been a few times where I've seen, the caster photos or who's being hired go up for Twitter. And I see some people that were like, hey, where's Skiff? you should bring Skiff on, blah, blah, blah. And granted, I love it. I appreciate the attention and people talking me up, but I always try to go in there and like, hey, it's all good that I wasn't hired. You got a great group of people here because most of those casters are my friends. I want people to support them too. Like, hey, make sure you show them support. Still tune in because it's going to be a good show. Easy, simple stuff. Now, you could just ignore it, which isn't always the best option, but it's also you not giving it attention as well. But if you start like retweeting these tweets, a lot of them, to me, that just says you're all about making it about you because you didn't make it into commentary for an event you wanted to get on. And that's a really bad look. Because now your fellow co-casters who you might work with at an event at some point have already got this perception about you that you're very me. And you're kind of willing to throw a temper tantrum because you weren't picked up. Because like I was saying, it's a lot of unneeded attention on you. Who wants to work with someone like that, right? If I see myself getting picked up for a gig and I see a friend of mine creating a whole bunch of fuss because they didn't get picked up for the gig, all of a sudden I'm looking like you could have just said, hey, let's go Skiff, or let's go blah, blah, blah person who made it on there. I'm happy my friends are all casting. But now I'm just kind of sitting here. I'm like, all right, that's strange that you would just be like that. And like, again, remember when I said casters talk? We talk. All of us. About a lot of things. Especially if someone's acting up. Believe it or not. And then finally, out of this topic, I want to discuss production and TOs. Again, they're people, right? But if you make their job more difficult in any way, your best decision here is to apologize, right? Let them know you're very sorry, and then make sure whatever mistake you made, you just don't make it again, especially that weekend. Now, being late is one of the more consistent ways I've seen people ruin their opportunities. And being late more than once is nearly a death sentence, right? If you're late once, it's not the worst thing in the world. Again, you apologize, you make sure it doesn't happen again, you do your job, right? But if you're really late, that's already not a good look. And again, like I mentioned, if you're late multiple times throughout the weekend for one event, you're not working that event anymore. I'd be shocked if that event picked you back up. But like being late, I mean, you hold up the daily schedule. If there's not an immediate replacement, you're probably costing the event money, which they're already paying you, hopefully. Now you want to cost them more money that's not going to you or anybody else. It's just you holding up the bracket. Not a good look. The good news is that this is also like the easiest thing that you can address. You show up early. Check in with the streamers. Let them know you're there. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm ready to go whenever. I'll be right out front. Just let me know when we need to switch, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to run and grab a drink or a snack real quick, but I'm here. Just anything, let them know that you are in the immediate area. And again, outside of that, just be a decent person. Weird how that's a recurring pattern. You just got to thank them for the work, be courteous, and, again, be decent. And then remember when I said casters talk to each other? Well, so do production and TOs. A lot. They work with each other a lot. Often, you don't even recognize it. But they'll let each other know if you're a liability. And if that's what ends up happening, you're done. Like, you're not going to be doing anything else besides maybe occasional regional work. It's what it is. Again, it's really easy to just be decent. Lastly, I want to talk about expectations. It's good to have goals, and despite anything I say here, you should still try your best to meet those goals. But the problem is that there are a lot of casters. Smash in particular has a lot of casters. We probably have more than any other esport, mostly due to how grassroots we are, right? And with so many events all over the world, it just makes sense when you think about it. Like locals, regionals, majors, how many are in each country? There's a lot of potential casters already in those fields and people who are trying to make their own way. I was once told by a pretty prominent member in the FGC that we probably have more talent on the mic than everybody else in FGC. And whether you believe that or not, I don't care, but it just kind of goes to show that people from the outside view Smash, for the most part, people who matter, I guess, that we have a lot of talent. We're stacked on the microphone. There's a lot of us. We're really good. But the problem is that there's only so many gigs in the world for people to cast at. So basically what it comes down to is not everyone can make it. It's just how it works. Top 8 at a super major, that's usually always top cut, which are people who have worked a summit style event plus a few others. And unfortunately for a lot of you, that's never going to change until people walk away. Or to paraphrase Slime, kill Coney. But I digress. Basically, you put all your eggs into one basket, you're just really limiting yourself. But that's about it for topics I really wanted to discuss. Maybe later down the line I could expand on some of these a little bit more, but I feel like I kind of hit on everything I wanted to. I hope you found this informative. If you agree or disagree with anything, you can let me know below or hit me up on Twitter. I don't know which side I want to put this on. We'll figure it out. But my DMs are open there at Skiff Talks, and you can throw me hate mail if you really want, or just say, hey, your video sucks, you suck, you're ugly. With that being said, I mean, take it easy and be good to each other.